Hello, good morning, good lunch, good evening to the world. I'd like to welcome you to our first webinar. My name is Axel Deike. I am since 40 years in the automotive industry. I worked at BMW for more than 30 years, and now I am on my own as a free consultant. Here, in this case, I am speaking as the chair of the IEEE Industry Connection Group. So, Laurie, next, please. I was told to organize a little bit the housekeeping items. First of all, please, everybody should be aware the session will be recorded. So it's will be available on public for everyone later on. Please, everyone who is not presenting at the moment, mute your microphone. There is a chat function on your screen you use, please, for questions and all kind of communication. And to pose questions to the speakers, use the Q&A button, which should be lower on your screen, please. Next, please. So this should show the Q&A. So specifically to the audience, in case you are going to have all kind of questions, please don't hesitate to come up with whatever. It's going to be much more lively and more interesting the more questions are coming. Next slide, please. So what are we doing here? What is the idea? I introduced myself a little bit. I did meet Herman Brandt he's the director of the IEEE in Europe last year, and he invited me to set up an industry connection group with, you see the other people on the right, with some other leading industry people from the automotive industry to set up an industry connection group in terms of all kinds of issues which are, let's say, hot potatoes, which are interesting to be discussed in the automotive industry as a pre-forum before it's going into any further discussions like standardization and so on. So the idea is to have a forum which is offering a platform for you. So the more questions are coming, the more ideas are coming, the better. Welcome very much to come up with any issue. The first issue we did think, which is a hot potato, so to say, is cybersecurity. At my time at BMW, I was involved in the first issues on cybersecurity, but of course, this is a much more hot potato now, specifically when we are talking about autonomous vehicles. Of course, everybody is afraid whatever can happen if the connectivity is not safe. The next, please. So what is the offer today? It's a webinar, so we prepared 3 presentations. The key idea of this forum is to be global. Global means specifically in terms of the automotive industry that we have EU region, we have China region, and we have the United States. Speaking in terms of Europe, I have the pleasure to introduce Riccardo Mariani. He is at the moment the VP of Industry Safety at NVIDIA. Before he worked at Intel and Logitech, a well-known figure as well in the IEEE Computer Society and other standardization issues. He's really well-known, and I really have the pleasure to have him online, and he will do the technical moderation as well, because he's much more knowledgeable in terms of cybersecurity than I am. Speaking for the China region, I do have the pleasure to introduce Yanan Zhang. Yanan is the first name, Zhang is a family name. She works as a Deputy Director Cybersecurity at CATARC. CATARC is something like the TÜV in Germany, or the leading state-organized standardization forum in China. She also was involved in representing China in terms of the international cybersecurity standards like the ISO, SAE 21434 and so on. So she is well known in the industry as well. Last but not least, Mr. Joachim Teiber. Joachim Teiber is an ex-colleague of myself. We worked together on some issues at BMW. And now, or since already 10 years, I hope. Okay, you can correct later if you like, Joachim. He is in South Carolina, organizing or representing there, working there at the Clemson University for some time, and now at the ITRC, sorry, which is a joint venture between the Clemson University and BMW. And he is very much involved in all kinds of standard discussion forums with the US Department of Energy, with US Department of Transportation, and US DOE, and all kind of leading American automated vehicle technology issues. Last but not least, we would like to have a panel discussion. Panel discussion in this case means these three people are going to discuss it with one another. Does it fit really? Do we have a global approach which fits together, or do we have overlaps, or do we have contradictions, whatever? And most of your questions from the audience may be answered here. So now, next, please. So now I would like to hand over to Ricardo. Please, your turn.
Okay, and I'm very happy to be here, and thanks a lot, Axel, for the kind introduction. What I will discuss is a bit the state of art in EU region, but I will also start with an introduction, and we can go in the next slide, please. So we all know automated vehicles are an extraordinary innovation and a combination of many different advanced type of technologies. They are indeed a revolution from many different aspects. So then as user, but also of course as who is creating those automated vehicle, as a supplier or as a manufacturer, we really want that we trust those automated vehicles. So what do we mean as trust? So I'm using a picture that from the VDA, and as shown in this slide, the trust is built by many different aspects. So we start from the top. We have the classical RAMs, so means reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety. And safety is composed by system safety, functional safety, and the safety of the intended functionalities or SOTIF. Then this is interlaced or combined with dependability that adds on top of those also the issues on security. That is will be the topic of this webinar. So that means integrity of the information, availability of information, and also the confidentiality of the information. Then we combine with other aspects that are somehow on a broader level, like privacy, usability, ethics, and robustness. All those aspects are critical. And this is why the IEEE is very much engaged, not only on all the different, I would say, aspects, but on this as a whole. And we can go in the next slide, please. So if we zoom a little bit more on the AV, especially the automated vehicles that are very well interconnected, The critical aspects that have direct impact on the AV architecture, as says, is first reliability. Of course, we need to guarantee the continuity of correct service. Then we need to have availability. I mean, every one of us, we want to have the service. We want to have a vehicle that goes where we want or does the function that we want. So availability is important. And this, we want to guarantee availability also in the presence of a failure. So that means we need to have resiliency. We want to have all of that with safety. So we want to have absence of any kind of consequences that may hit user on environment. And then on the other end, we also want to have the function when we asked. So it's the time determinism is also very important, in particular on those embedded systems that are quite real time. All of that cannot stand if we don't have a guarantee on security. What do we mean? We mean the absence of unauthorized access to all the vehicle-related assets, the functions, the signal, and data. And this is what we are going to discuss in this webinar. Also, as already said by Axel, this is the first of a sequence of webinars and workshops in which we will also touch on the other aspects. This is very important because safety, security, reliability, availability, resilience, and time determinism, they are all very well interconnected one with the other. And we can go in the next slide, please. So if we look a bit more in detail on security, let's have somehow a closer look to the interfaces where we can have an attack. So if we start from the bottom left and the bottom right, for sure we have risk of interfaces through the diagnostic maintenance tool and even through the connection that could be the connection to the grid. For example, for the EV related to the smart charging. If we move inside the box, we have the risk related to sensor, such LiDAR, radar, camera, and all, of course, all the type of wireless interactions. As also true infotainment system, of course, this is quite obvious. If we move more inside into the vehicle, into the ECUs, we have many risks in the many ECUs in the car, because of course also they are interconnected between in-vehicle networks such CAN or Ethernet. And by the way, this is not just important when the system is deployed, when the vehicle is in the field, but all across the life cycle. This is why we show at the bottom of the figure that this is important during design, during when we produce, when we use, and the end of life. Then if we move outside of the box, it's clear to everybody that the new world of the AV, of the automobile, is software defined. So it is expected that the function and feature of the car will be evolved in a continuous way over the lifetime of the car, with an army of software engineers working behind in order that your experience as a driver is every day is better. So you can imagine from the connectivity point of view, this is about the over-the-air updates, the eCall, the crowdsourced services like maps, and in general, the connection to the Internet of Things up to the cloud. And this is clearly a critical interface for challenging insecurity. We can go in the next slide, please. So now, to address all the challenges I have shown, there is really a forest of standards and regulation. And it's flourishing. Every day we have somehow a new one. And this is very well represented in this ENISA diagram. So it's a diagram from ENISA. ENISA is the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, and I'm using a lot of their inputs in my slides. So if we start from the bottom, Of course, there are general, so I would say generic or general type of standard, such as the ISO AC 27000 series or other. Those set the foundation, including even the ISO 9000 in terms of the quality that you need to achieve. Then on top of that, we have the standard related to, for example, the vehicle 2X, ranging from the standard from ETSI to the ISO TC 204, and of course the IEEE 802.11, that is quite important. On top of that, we have the automotive related one, such as the ISO SA 21434, that is interconnected, as explained earlier, with functional safety and SOTIF, as also with other standards like the IEEE 1609 on wireless access. So as you can see, on top of the figure, some of the standards are used by a lot of the stakeholders, others just are followed by a subset of them. So one of the goals of this initiative and another initiative is to be sure that everyone is using all the plethora of standards. And we can go in the next slide, please. So yeah, we can go in the next slide. Okay, no, so, okay, sorry, because there is a small delay. If we can go back one slide. So on top of standard, we have a regulation. We have so many regulation as well, either by countries or by areas, for example, by a standardization organization, such as ISO, SAE, IEEE, or by countries. The other speaker will focus on what's happening in China and in the US. I will, in the next slide, I will focus on what is happening in the Europe. Yes, you can go in the next slide. So if we look to what's happening in Europe, the existing EU regulation are mainly the UN regulation for automotive cybersecurity and the EU Cybersecurity Act. About the first, the main requirement are you need to have a mandatory set of requirements as condition for the vehicle registration, and then also the certification is based on a type approval by an authority which is designed as a technical service. The objective of that regulation is to impose a kind of a base level of requirement to assure safety and the security of the data, especially from the point of view of the consumer of the vehicle and its infrastructure. So then, about the second, the main requirement are a voluntary certification of products with regard to the cybersecurity. This is general, not just for the automotive, and it's likely that this will become a requirement in a later step. In this case, the certification is based on a self-certification approach for the lower assurance level or external for the highest assurance level. The objective in this case is to guarantee that the consumer is able to identify products with a good level of security in the transparency of the market. And we can go in the next one, please. So if we look on the NIST 2.0 directive, the guidelines in Europe are mainly that the states they should adopt a national cybersecurity strategy, designate national authorities, and so forth, and especially a team of response for any kind of cybersecurity incident. The state should also lay down cybersecurity risk management and reporting obligation for essential entities and important entities. And then there are mainly other initiatives like Cyclone that is to establish a kind of management in a coordinated way to collect the cybersecurity incident. And what is important for this discussion is ENISA that is required to issue, in cooperation with the Commission, a report on the state of cybersecurity. And in fact, recently ENISA published a report for the vehicle. And this is what I will show in the next slide. Yeah, so if we start having a more look in detail to the ENISA report, it's very recent, has been published just at the end of last year. First, the report highlights the importance of recognizing that many stakeholders are involved with CAM, so the mobility that is automated and connected. So starting from top, you have OEM, you have the tier 1 and 2, and then you have up to the smart infrastructure, the IT supplier association, and of course, European association, and also bodies like the IEEE that are responsible to create standards. And why it is important to recognize that an ecosystem is, I will show in the next one, please. So why it is so important? This is a couple of examples. You can find additional examples in the report by ENISA. If we start on the left, the OEM must interact, of course, with the suppliers for technical standardization and the process method standardization on cybersecurity. Again, this is one of the reasons we have this initiative. IEEE really want to support that kind of a requirement. Or, and if we move on the green one, they must connect with automotive aftermarket operator to guarantee the compliance with the process requirements. On the right, similar things we have with the tier 1 and tier 2 must connect with OEM and automotive aftermarket operator, but also, for example, they need to cooperate with the national authority for incident reporting. Having a database of related incident for CAM related to those kind of threats in cybersecurity is a great importance. And we can go in the next slide, please. So we don't have some time to go in detail, but in ENISA, we have also a map of the system that are involved at the different level. For example, without going too much in detail, on the level of the tool, you need to establish a virtual security operations center for detection and reaction to threats. Or you need to deliver a secure and standardized manner for the over-the-air updates, ensuring that all the different stakeholders are involved and certified. And we can go in the next slide, please. So this is, again, a focus for the road vehicle and the mobility devices, user devices, V2X, and the tires and road infrastructure. So, for example, regarding the communication between the vehicle and other infrastructure, there is, as you know, the ITS directive in order that we have a standardized type of technology with kind of interconnection that are very, designed in a secure way. And we can go in the next slide, please. So this is also very important. We need to have the measures to react to the risks. This is a nice also table we can find it in the report in which the measures are defined in categories: governance, risk and ecosystem management, detection and reaction, maintenance, and IS/ITOT measure. What is interesting in the report is that there is also an interview done by many players of this ecosystem to understand how many of those kind of a measure are implemented, full or impartial, or even they are unknown. So, and the picture we see, I think it's one of the challenges. Today, the understanding and application of the measure is very scattered. You can have some players that they are doing everything end to end, other they are very just at the beginning. So that is very important. One of the key things I believe also organizations like the IEEE have the duty to do is to be sure that all those measures are defined and represented with standards such that they can use on a broader level. And we can go to the next slide, please. So, yes, I am at the end of what I had in mind. I hope I gave you an overall idea of the challenges, as also what's going on in Europe. Here you have a list of references if you want to go more in detail on the report from the EU and other papers that I found interesting. So now I think we have maybe time for one question, otherwise we will handle them in the panel. So let me see. Okay, yes, I see a couple of a comment that I think it's very, yeah, the map that I have shown does not include some of the other standards like the IEEE 1616 or also the draft of the R155 and 156. Those are very good input. I think one of the, and this we may discuss with Axel or on the panel, one of the role of these activities, industry connection activity, is also to create a map in which all the different initiatives are very well defined, listed, but not just listed, but also interconnected, because often there could be overlap and often there could be areas that are important just to certain sector. So that I think it's a very good comment. We will add that in the picture and we will take them into account in our analysis. So, and then there is another question about the role of VLSI in cyberspace. I'm not really sure what this means in detail, but yeah, I'm guessing, of course, some of the measures I have shown in my previous slide are also implemented in silicon. And therefore means that it's very important to have infrastructure on chip that they are able to support some, of course, of the cybersecurity coding or any kind of authorization and activities. So, for example, as we have in VLSI in system on chip, some kind of a subsystem that we call kind of a safety island, at the same way we have the same type of island related to cybersecurity. So in which we have all those IPs and techniques that are helpful to build the measures we have seen earlier on. So it's a good input. There is a trend of improvement of such a measure, and this will go ahead in the course of the years. Also in the standardization activities. Okay, I think I am at the end of my time. If you have any other question, you feel you input in the tool and we will handle them during the session at the end. So now I hand over to the next one. So we will see the details about what's going on in China. Yanan.
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me? Hi. Hi.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you, Yanan. Go ahead.
Okay. Distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen, good evening from China. I feel honored to participate in this webinar and make a presentation. I'm going to share the current development status of China's ICV cybersecurity industry. Next page. A short self-introduction. I'm Yanan, working in Katak. I'm the director of SEV Research Department. I also do some supporting work for government department and automotive association in China. I'm registered expert of ISO Working Group 11, which is responsible of two cybersecurity international standards. They are ISO SAE 21434 and ISO PAS 5112. Next page. Next page. Thank you. Nowadays, due to the rapid development of software technology and communication technology, vehicles are processing increasing numbers of ECUs and connected functions, which brings users a better driving experience. Meanwhile, vehicles are facing more serious cybersecurity risks and threats. Next page. In recent years, cybersecurity incidents occurred frequently. OEMs began to realize the importance of cybersecurity. According to statistics, cyber attacks on SEV has been increasing rapidly since year 2018, and times of vehicle recalls due to cybersecurity issues are also rising. Such reported cybersecurity incidents will certainly bring in financial, sales, and brand image losses to related OEMs. As the largest automotive market in the world, every year there are over 20 million vehicles produced and sold in China. Due to the high population density in Chinese cities and the complicated road traffic conditions, Chinese government and enterprises along the automotive value chain are attaching great importance to automotive cybersecurity. Next page. Next, yes. To protect a vehicle from cybersecurity threats and risks, enterprises and China automotive industry are working on developing protection technologies by analysis of key components and systems in vehicle, which are ECU, in-vehicle network, cloud platform, application, and radio. Katak has formulated a targeted security protection strategies and design scheme. Next page. On this page, the protection strategies of ECU and the in-vehicle network are displayed. The main idea is to first analyze the potential threat attack path, and then develop protection strategies against the corresponding attack. Next page. According to ISO SAE 21434, threat analysis and risk assessment, short for TARA, is a very important cybersecurity activity. The cyber activity risk management, including risk identification, analysis, treatment, and verification, covers the entire life cycle of vehicle from concept phase to operation and maintenance phase. Based on our know-how and experience with OEMs, Katak has developed a guideline and some templates which are able to assist OEMs to execute tasks on their vehicle types. Next page. To verify the implemented protection strategies, appropriate test methods are necessary. By developing testing strategies on network architecture, ECU, T-box, IVI, cloud platform, app, and radio, Katak has established a set of applicable test process, test tools, and test technical methods. Up to now, we have completed tests on about 80 vehicles. Furthermore, Katak has established a test case database, vulnerability database, protection strategy database, test process database, and a test tool library. The data, records, and methods in this database could be the reference methods, example for the entire Chinese automotive industry. Next page. To enhance information sharing in Chinese automotive industry in field of cybersecurity, Katak has taken the lead to establish China Automotive Vulnerability Database, short for CAVD, and C-Auto ASIC. CAVD collects vulnerability information through various methods, such as internal testing, data sharing, and third-party organizations. It clarifies, verifies, and stores vulnerability according to the 4 types of cloud service, communications, in-vehicle, and external threats, and gradually discloses the general type vulnerability to the public. The data in CAVD will help to construct emergent incident responsible center in the future. Like the Auto ASIC in US, Katak has constructed a cybersecurity-related information sharing mechanism and analysis center to enhance the communication in Chinese automotive industry. Up to now, there are over 20 OEM members. In next couple of years, the number will increase, and also Tier 1 players and service providers are welcome to join it. Next page. Next page, yes. The important cybersecurity international reference documents are listed in the page 21434, 5112, 24089, and UNECE R155. Experts from China have participated in the working group of these documents. They did some contributions by joining discussion meeting, creating comments, and completing patents for some cyber laws. To follow up the developing step of the world, Chinese government and companies are planning to transfer the international standards to Chinese local standards and to implement the requirements to their business. By doing this, it's more convenient for Chinese companies to communicate with foreign organizations Next case. To help the automotive companies enhance their cybersecurity capability, the National Technical Community of Auto Standards, short for NTCAS, has led complete a set of cybersecurity-related standards, which are listed in the table. The approved standards will be released in second course this year. Almost all these standards are recommended and technical standards for products or service. This is because for most companies, it is easier to start with products and technology. Automotive cybersecurity is a relatively new field in automotive industry, and responding management standards and regulation are still not released or not taken into force. To build a management system is an extremely complicated program to companies, especially to large OEMs. Therefore, they could start with the easy task, providing products which comply with recommended standards so that the vehicle's cybersecurity could be ensured. After companies process cybersecurity experience, such as implementing protection strategies and penetration testing, they would have more preparation for trusting the management system. Next page. The last, I will share six trend. One is accelerated the establishment and implementation of cybersecurity-related standards. The second, improve the approved management of cybersecurity-related products, including vehicles and components. The third, improve the testing system and risk assessment system for ICV. The fourth, establish national pilot areas for ICV and smart traffic system. The fifth, improve the information sharing for automotive industry. The sixth, accelerate the construction of testing and certification system for ICV. Okay, that's all. That's all from my presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, Yanan. It was really great introduction and description. I think we have some time for a couple of questions. First, from Wei Ren Chen, is there any plan inviting Tier 1 and Tier 2 company into the C-Auto ISAC so that there is no weak chain regarding to cybersecurity issues?
Yes, there are already Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers in the C-Auto ISAC.
Okay, so if I understood well, because the audio is not great, you say that they are already there.
Yes.
Okay, good. And then we have another other question by Lori Tisnos. What consideration have been given to the overall life cycle of vehicles, and at what point will these autos no longer receive the security-related updates, decommissioning the vehicle 10 years or maybe 20 years? Any comment about that?
It's about the maintenance and the operation phase in 2434. And by monitoring the vulnerabilities and by some kind of incident response, can we monitor the cybersecurity-related risk and vulnerabilities?
Okay, I'm not so sure. So maybe if we can repeat again the audio. Yeah, not so clear.
I'm not so sure about the question.
Okay, so I think maybe we also ask the sender of the question to add some more details and we can discuss in the panel. So maybe let's defer this to the panel. And then there is a question that I think is a good one by James Savage. So is possible that you share the web link for drafts of the standard 1 to 5, and are there any English version of this draft available online? Maybe this is a general question, how much those kind of a standard are accessible to outside China?
Okay, the first question is the drafts. The drafts are public on the internet. Unfortunately, they are all in Chinese, no English version. So, the question is how do they unify with the other parts of the world? I think the standards are only valid in China, and some requirements will be applied or referenced for the mandatory type of approval about cybersecurity test in China. And I think when the UNC regulations are taken into force, there can be some other organizations or some kind of organizations can combine and unify the test method about cybersecurity for type of approval. And then we can talk about the different requirements about tests from different parts of the world. And maybe some requirements or some items, some ideas can be shared and be unified.
Okay. And then in the meantime, we got some more detail about the question from Lori. We will go through this in the panel since I think it's very much interesting. So when does the OEM stop giving security updates for the vehicle? So do we risk that the vehicle at a certain point in time, maybe after 10 years, doesn't receive anymore any security update? And so that is a potential challenge. But we can cover this in the panel. So let me see, we have time, I think, for another question. So this is also maybe generic and we can touch in the panel, but I don't know if you have comment. Any specific security requirement for security verification for FPGA security in SoC used in ECU and TCU? This is by Alon Refele. Maybe this one we can also touch in the panel. Maybe last question about the trend that you have shown in the slide number 35. Is there any deadline or any timeline that you have in mind, or it's a long term?
It's a long term, and it's just a plan. And how to conduct plan in details, it's still in discussing. But this trend needs not just the OEMs or suppliers, but also the supporting from government. and some about the trends, like the pilot area, it needs a lot of supporting from the government. So they are just an idea for the future. It's a long-term plan. There's sorry, unfortunately, no detailed plans about it.
Okay, I understand. Okay. This is also maybe a matter of the discussion in the panel, just to see if and when those different initiatives from the different regions will converge at a certain point in time. Okay, many thanks also for taking all the questions. I think we can move to the next, to Joachim, that will give us a view of the US, but also on some other aspect. So Joachim, it's up to you.
Thank you. So very pleased to give a presentation today in this group. And my presentation will basically refer to how we get ready for the quantum age. As you know, quantum technology is currently quite rapidly being developed. So I will give an overview. I just, referring to my introduction from Axel, I just wanted to get some clarification. So in the past, I worked for BMW, that's correct. And I am in the US, where I was one of the co-developers of an automotive research campus, which is called COICA, International Center of Automotive Research. This campus is affiliated to Clemson University, and BMW is one of the investors in this campus. ITIC is an independent organization. It's a non-profit organization, which is geographically quite close to this campus, but it's a test bed. It's a test bed for connected, automated, and electrified vehicle technology. So it's like a proving ground. And I am the CTO of ITIC. It's an independent organization which collaborates with COICA and of course also with BMW. I just want to get this clarified before some wrong assumptions are being made. So if you go to the next slide. So first of all, I wanted to refer to what quantum technology actually means to us and why it is relevant from a cybersecurity perspective. So so-called classical computers are working with bits, so a binary system where you have either the 0 or 1 condition. But in a quantum computer, the calculations are done based on qubits, and qubits can have any state between 0 and 1, which leads to the effect that quantum computers can calculate very complex problems in a fraction of the time that classical computers would need. So the good thing is, of course, you can solve a lot of interesting problems with quantum computers. The bad thing is that you can use quantum computers also to launch attacks. And so if a system can withstand attacks, cyber attacks, both from classical as well as from quantum computers, then you consider such a system quantum safe. So the big question obviously is, how long does it take until quantum computers become widely commercially available? This is the big question. And I don't have a clear answer to that, but here's an example that IBM, for example, is predicting or giving an outlook that they will have a 1,000 qubit quantum computer available in as soon as 2023. So in other words, large companies are working on this technology, putting a lot of resources on it. And so we cannot ignore that. And we need to consider this in our automotive cybersecurity strategies. So if we go to the next slide, please. So potential areas for quantum computing in automotive are quite plentiful. So we can use this in the R&D process for a lot of optimization problems. In the V2X, it is very interesting to use quantum computing in connection to situational awareness, so basically avoiding crashes. And also to use quantum computer for cyber threat prevention, not only launching the attacks, also preventing the attacks. And obviously in automotive fleet operation, we can use it for route optimization, energy use optimization, as well as in itself for autonomous driving. So if we go to the next slide. What is important when we talk about a quantum safe V2X ecosystem, you need to basically look into the vehicle itself and make it quantum safe. You need to look into the transportation infrastructure. How do you make this quantum safe, as well as the edge and cloud computing infrastructure to make that quantum safe. There are different methods to reach that by, for example, quantum key distribution or quantum random number generation chips like QRNG chips, which are now becoming commercially available. Then also to upgrade your encryption methods to quantum safe or quantum ready encryption methods. If we go to the next slide, please. So if we look into the future of the next 10 years in terms of V2X technology, we do see that, for example, in road safety assistant, everything goes in the direction of sharing information between vehicles, like hazard information, sensor data to be shared, map information to be shared. And that poses, obviously, the problem of compromising this information, sharing wrong information among many vehicles, which then could be very catastrophic in the consequence. And then also when we look into the advanced safety automated driving, you will see first more activity on V2X for supporting autonomous valet parking, teleoperation driving, and then in the more towards the end of the decade, we hope that we will be reaching dynamic intersection management and dynamic cooperative traffic fleet management. If we go to the next slide, please. So in terms of outlook of autonomous driving, if we go into as far as 2040, we will see that autonomous vehicles will contribute to the majority of the total passenger miles driven. And as vehicles are becoming autonomous, it's also very important to note that they will, per vehicle, drive more miles. And that the reason for this is that a lot of those vehicles would be more used in a commercial context than in a private use context. And so that is one important aspect to consider. So you will see higher penetration of autonomous vehicle technology over the long term. Now, when we talk about quantum computing, then it is not unlikely that 2040 we have actually a world that uses quantum technology, and therefore to consider that from a cybersecurity perspective is important. Another aspect is that with the adoption of AV technology, software complexity will increase significantly. And that means that because the productivity gains in software productivity are not as strong, there's a higher risk of failures, undiscovered problems in the code, and that then leads to higher security risk levels in general for connected and autonomous vehicles in the future. So if we go to the next slide. So one important aspect is the computing power needed to harden autonomous automotive V2X systems to be quantum safe. So this is a chicken egg problem because computing capacity is expensive, and to dedicate more capacity for stronger cryptographic methods that are needed to make systems quantum safe is a big decision. But we basically need to come to conclusion, and this is typically done through standards as well as test procedures to find the right balance, how much computing power needs to be dedicated, how much do we want to invest in this, because we don't want to invest in this if we will never need it in the next 30 years, but if it's being relevant in the next 10, 20 years, then it is definitely important to consider investments in more computing power, specifically for these hardening the systems to be quantum safe. So next slide, please. So another question is, how do we apply a quantum risk assessment? There is obviously some interesting best practices that are here explained. So we first look at all assets and determine their cryptographic protection. Then we basically need to look at the progress that quantum technologies are making. How quickly do they reach the target system? We need to test and validate quantum safe cryptography methods, then look at potential threat actors, and then basically come up with a plan to make the target system quantum safe and prioritize the highest risks. So we go to the next slide, please. So what is important that is NIST, so National Institute of Standardization in the US, has addressing the risk for quantum computing in a way that they are planning to release an initial standard for quantum resistant cryptography quite soon, so in 2022. And my recommendation is that those draft standards and standards need to be reviewed by the automotive community in order to make a decision when those recommended cryptographic methods need to be addressed in their plans and when they reach then product design. So next slide, please. In general, as a side remark, is that the NIST framework for improving critical infrastructure on cybersecurity has been quite heavily used in developing the content of an automotive cybersecurity best practice framework, which has been designed by the Alliance of Automotive Manufacturers and the Association of Global Automakers. But when we look at this framework, we will not find anything about quantum computing and the emergence of quantum computing. So therefore, my recommendation is to look at these new developments of NIST and upgrade those frameworks. So if we go to the next slide. So in general, an organization that needs to be considered in the US as a big player in automotive cybersecurity is AutoISAC. Just heard from the previous speaker that in China we have a similar organization. So Auto ISAC stands for Automotive Information Sharing and Analysis Center. It's around now for a number of years. It's very strongly supported by the automotive OEM side, so both on passenger vehicles as well as commercial vehicles. And I think it would be quite important that Auto ISAC starts to address quantum safe systems but this organization would be a key organization to adopt this topic. So if we go to the next slide. In terms of what is the approach from US DOT, so US DOT has a multitude of research programs that are targeted towards securing the connected transportation environment. So some of the initiatives are focused towards the vehicle itself, like the vehicle cybersecurity initiative. Then there is an initiative that focuses on the infrastructure, so the roadside infrastructure. There's also a dedicated short-range communication security initiative, which needs to be revisited because there was very recently a new rule from FCC to repurpose the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum for Wi-Fi use and for C-V2X, which basically means that you need to, DSSC will become less relevant in the future. And therefore, those security initiatives need to be revisited in this new light. If we go to the next slide, please. So in terms of relevance of the transportation network in the US, it is important to note that in particular, the Federal Highway Administration controls a very critical piece of the economy with the transportation network. Most of freight shipments in the US are being done through trucks. So actually 82% of all freight shipped in the US are done by trucks. And that means that if we would see quantum technology arising in a number of years, and we don't have any standards and no plans, then such a transportation network could be left very vulnerable. And this needs to be taken very seriously very soon, in my opinion. So if we go to the next slide. The future of the US road system. So if we look into the next 10, 20, 30 years, it is quite likely that what I call coordinated driving will become a commonplace, in particular on the highways. So coordinated driving will play a role there, but it can also play a role in smart intersections in urban environment. And it will be important that because of coordinated driving basically means that you need to look at V2X interoperability, that you make those systems quantum resilient. And that is a topic that needs to be addressed. The next slide. So this is, so what do we need to consider for the quantum age? So first we need to look into available technologies like quantum random number generator chipsets to be implemented in our systems to apply post-quantum encryption algorithms to basically implement quantum key distribution concepts and to have a very hard look at how we can reconfigure hardware, in particular if we think about dedicating more computing power for quantum resilience. And we need to adapt the system engineering processes from implementing new quantum safe design principles, and also train our engineers in a way that they can understand this technology and can actually improve the systems to be quantum safe. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer some questions if there are anyone.
Okay, Joachim, thanks a lot for the very exciting talk. Yeah, we have one question by Wei Ren Chen, and this also the same that I had. How does the quantum computing affect the current cybersecurity measure and mechanism, let's say, except the things related to the cryptography? Do you have any other of the touch point that you want to highlight?
I mean, I keep in mind the quantum random number generation that I said. I mean, if to build those number generators, QNRG chips into the system would be a question that would have to be decided quite soon. So yes, it's related to the crypto algorithms, but that is hardware that would have to be put into the vehicle. The question is, when are we doing this? So are we just trying to understand the algorithms and prepare ourselves for that, or are we already making hard decisions on which systems have to be built into a car, which is associated with cost? So that's, in my opinion, something to consider.
Okay, and maybe interconnected with that one, I think you already went through during the presentation, maybe it's worth to repeat, how and when do you see requirement related to this type of architecture into standard and regulation? Or let's say in the other way around, do you see that an important area of standardization?
Yeah, so I mean, the area that I would first is the system architecture, right? So I mean, I try to explain how do you make a system quantum safe? So so we need to review first the system architectures of vehicles and the standards we apply to in relation to vehicle system architectures. How do we adapt these standards so that if I'm developing a car, that I can actually say, yes, it will be quantum safe. So anything that relates to system architecture design, that would have to be revisited, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any additional other question related to your talk, so I think we can transfer to the panel and invite all the speaker to unmute. And I think it's also good if so, Yunchi, if you also want to introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, so I'm also computer memory, so we both use the same computer. So I'm Yanna's colleague from Qatar. I'm responsible for the international cybersecurity standards and the management system structure.
Okay, very happy to have you here.
Yes, Mr. Liang is my partner. My English listening is a bit poor, so he will help me answer the questions. If he don't know how to answer the question, he will discuss with me. Sorry, everyone.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I think we can go through some of the questions we received, but maybe before to start, let me ask in fact, to Yanan and Yunxi. So is there anything in the standardization or regulation effort in China about what has been just shown by Joachim? Of course, as much as you can tell us.
Okay, the Chinese government thought the cybersecurity was automotive is really important, and some of the strategies, some policies, guidelines has been produced, has been released, but all these are not mandatory. But to follow up the UN regulation, we will transform it to Chinese local regulation before it enforced in Europe. But the draft is still not released. It will be released in the second quarter this year.
Okay,
so,
yeah. My question...
Please?
No, yeah, my question was mainly on the quantum type of computing. Is there any discussion ongoing in China on that aspect, just for our knowledge?
I don't understand. Maybe the signal is not very good.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, no. The quantum computing and the relationship with cybersecurity, is there something you also discussed in China?
I'm not sure about the exact meaning of quantum computing.
Okay. Anyway, so maybe we can discuss then later if we have time. So let's go back to some of the questions. I think one of the questions we received is when does the OEM need to stop providing the update for security for the vehicle? So if each of you can comment on what the regulation are asking and what the standard are doing in that sense. Maybe we can start with China, and then we go to Joachim, and then I will comment.
There's no regulation about that. There is no regulation required for the stop reporting about the update of the connected car.
Okay, understood.
I think Ricardo, if I can just comment here a little bit, that we need to structure this a little bit more. So first of all, if I have a critical safety system which requires system upgrades, and then and I cannot upgrade the system any longer, then I could actually lose the right to operate the vehicle. Because I mean, the question is whether there's another way to upgrade the system other than over-the-air updates. So I can always bring the car into the garage, right? But to enforce that this needs to be done over the air, that is, in my opinion, questionable. I mean, like this, the regulation first needs, you need to be clear what we regulate. So are we regulating that a vehicle can theoretically be operated 20, 30, 40 years? And there's a lot of old timers. And when is a practical commercial, useful commercial life? And during that time, whether it's over the air or not over the air, obviously all the safety, at least safety critical systems need to be upgradable. I just heard that, for example, in Audi, there's some system that are 3 or 4 years old that cannot, that do not support 3D views of navigation system, and it's not safety critical. So I think we need to be clear: are we talking about safety critical or non-safety critical? Are we talking about just over-the-air updates or not, or in general upgrades, system upgrades that could also be done with conventional methods? Then it should be clearer.
Okay, I think the question was addressing both aspects. From my view, so given that the trend, as I mentioned, it's really to provide a long lifetime of the services and continuous update. I believe the update for cyber security measure really need to extend at least for the full lifetime. And if I'm not wrong, there is even a requirement by UNESE, by the task force of the UN, that the cybersecurity management system is required to be established to support the security of vehicles through their whole lifetime. How much this then is covered by the 21434, I think it is, and by other, but yeah, I think it should be cross lifetime.
But Ricardo, coming back to what I said before with the safety, so if, for example, I'm getting attacked, and as a consequence, and after 15 years, for example, because of an attack, I cannot use, let's say, a non-safety critical system. The question is, are we protecting predominantly the safe operation of the vehicle, or also convenience functions that need to be protected that are not safety critical? And that is not being, the question was not specifically directed into this direction. So that needs to be clarified.
Okay, and by the way, we have a comment by Klaus Schaff saying that updates must be OTA. Everything else will be too expensive and too consuming in terms of time. This is just to, since it's a panel, it should be controversial. So that is one of the feedback. Yeah. So let me go through other questions that we have. So we have a couple on the quantum computing story. Is that envisioned to go also inside the computing vehicles? So in the platform, in the vehicle sometime in the future? And will this change the security scenario again? This is by Stefano Costa.
So, I mean, the first question is that, or the first direction that we see is that quantum technology, quantum computing would most likely first be made available in data centers, so outside the vehicle. And until you have a quantum chip inside of the vehicle, that is, I think, coming later. Now, that's my personal guess. So, I mean, it depends on the speed of development. And as you have seen that some of these quantum computers that are currently available, they are quite big. So we are far away from getting that small enough into, but I think we will see it first in data centers.
Okay, many thanks for the answer. Then let me go back to Yanani Nyushi. So there is a question again, as I mentioned earlier on, about Alon Raffaelli. Is any specific security requirement for security verification for FPGA security, FPGA security in SOC in China, in the standard that you are in regulation?
Sorry, because of the bad signal, I didn't get the entire question.
Yes, so is there any requirement for security verification of FPGA in the context of the ECU in a vehicle? So field programmable get array, this kind of integrated circuit? Or maybe let's say in a broader term, in the standard and regulation in China, do you have requirement for integrated circuits?
Right, I didn't follow. Is question about the requirements about ECUs? What?
Yes, for integrated circuits.
Integrated circuits.
I think, Yana, the question is.
Okay, about the integration of ECU, there is standards about it, the cybersecurity of integrated ECU and into the entire system.
Okay. So Joachim, any comment about that from your viewpoint?
No, I don't. No, I'm sorry. I don't have a comment on that.
Okay, and on my side, at least on my knowledge, there are not specific clause of a standard related to detailed implementation within FPGA. Of course, FPGA are mentioned all together with other technologies in some of the standard, even in, I think, in 21434, and in other, of course, a lot of the cybersecurity lifecycle described in the standard, as also in some of the implementation guidelines, are also applicable to FPGA. But at least myself, I'm not aware of a chapter of a standard focusing just on FPGA. But we may go back to that and answer offline. Let me go to other question. So still by Klaus Schaff, let me open better. So at today, most of OEM rely on certificates for OTA. This seems to be very risky in the light of a SolarWinds attack. How do you see this? With what other technology should be considered? For example, is DLT or using blockchain or a DLT as an appropriate extra layer of security? Is this something that can be used? What's your view? So maybe we start with Joachim.
Yeah, so I think DLT or distributed ledger technology is an interesting approach in this context, but it needs to be further tested. And in terms of standardization, I think we are still not, I mean, there are different groups that are discussing blockchain technology in context of automotive applications. But I don't think that this is yet already on the standardization level. So we would have to validate it first in tests. And then when these tests are promising, then we can basically move it towards a standardization path. But I wouldn't start with the standardization. I would first validate the technology in general.
Okay. And let me go back to Yanan and Yushim. So what is the, do you have any comment on that about the requirement or technology and measures recommended or required in your regulation standard for the OTA over the year updates?
Yes, there is a recommended standard about the software updates, including OTA updates. The project is still in discussing, and the draft is on working. And the requirements of it consider the UNC regulation 156 software update, and also some other documents like the management recall of VDA, the Red Book, and also consider the status of the current status of OEMs in China. And the standards will be finished, the first version of draft will be finished this year.
Okay, many thank you. And in the meantime, we got a message from Tom Kovalik, that is the chair of the IEEE 1616, and it's giving us this very interesting information that is considering NFC blockchain technology, and it is already been tested by the NFC Forum. So it seems that is one of the direction that we are having analyzed. Many thanks to Tom for this information. Okay, let's see a lot of questions. I need to open a bit more this tool. David Higam, hi David. So do you have a view on the compliance, or maybe say certification, with regards to regulation and the role of the third party services that we have seen with varying skills and experience with ISO 262. So in other words, how far is this regulation expected to go down to supply chain? So it remain at the vehicle level activity with self-regulation of the supply chain, or we will have, or do we envisage that we will have actors and bodies inspecting all the different stakeholders that we have just seen? What's your view? Maybe let's start with Joachim.
Well, I think that from a US perspective, there is a preference for self-regulation. But I think we need to, when we come to supply chain, it may also depend on how critical are those components that we are looking into this. Are we talking about the supply chain in general, or are we talking about critical path supply chain issues? So in the pandemic, we have seen in the car industry a lot of problems and then if you have in addition a cybersecurity issue that could then require that there needs to be more than self-regulation. So for non-critical path items, self-regulation might be fine, but if it's critical, then maybe we need inspection, mandatory inspection. But that's just a quick assessment of what I understood from the question.
Okay, and by the way, for all the speaker, you can read in detail the question in the Q&A in our panel for the Q&A. So let me ask back to the China. What's your direction? Are you expecting to have self-regulation, or your approach is different, and the regulation and the bodies to do the certification will go down into the chain from vehicle down to the stakeholders?
Okay, in China, there are not mandatory regulations about the certification of the supply chain of automotive industry. But for example, the ISO 21434, it's not just available for OEMs, but also for the tier 1 suppliers. So in China, there are some large tier 1 suppliers are preparing for the approval and certification, the 21434. But in the mandatory approval regulation in future, now in the draft, and there are some requirements about the supplier management for cybersecurity. And I remember also in the UNC regulation, but how to implement it, it's still a question. It's still open in China. But there are some OEMs, they require the supplier to have some certification. For example, the A-Spice, the 22nd family, and also TSAC. But other self-regulations, that they are not widely used in the industry.
Okay, many thanks. Yes, I also share the same. So, I mean, I think the regulation in Europe may, on top of the self-regulation, may then at the second maybe stage will start to grow and go down into the chain. I can imagine similarly to automotive. For this reason, I think it's important that the standards should give guidance. We know that the standard like the ISO 21438 and as similarly to the ISO 26262, they are quite general. So I think it's also important that we have more implementation level standard that can guide the certification bodies or the regulators to enable those entities to provide assessment. This is my point of view, is one also of the role of the IEEE to provide an instrument platform to work in that direction. Okay, let me see other questions. We have many. That is I was expecting this question. It's by Chitter of Continental. How we can bring security and safety culture all together within an automotive organization? How can we evaluate and continuously monitor and improve in these two cultural aspects? This is a famous type of debate. Are two domain? Should we connect better together? This, I think it will be also one of the aspects in the workshop. But let me start again. Let's start with Joachim. Any view about that? Safety and security, and maybe also reliability and availability. Yeah, how you merge them all together in automotive organization.
So how to manage safety and security in context with each other, you mean, right?
Yes.
How do you manage that in context? Did I understand that right? So my view is that just to clarify also the term safety and security in the German language, and my native language is German, is the safety and security in the German language have the same word. So it's quite so basically the way I look at it, safety means I want to protect the system from going into an unsafe operation, so where you basically can crash. And the security aspect is that if I have an attack that can bring me into this unsafe situation, I want to prevent that. So I basically need to protect myself. So security is always for me something more that I am focusing on protection, and safety is more to implement the quality of the system, that it will ideally never come into an unsafe condition. So if you correlate that, then means that if I'm developing, let's say, an autonomous vehicle, and I'm not paying attention to the quality of code and to the quality of the implementation, that can then leave me unprotected. And so that's how I see the correlation. And so I think safety standards and security standards may have to be developed or designed in this understanding that I just explained. But that's just my personal view. So that's my view on it.
Okay, many thank you, Joachim. Going back to China, so what do you have any answer to that? Which is the guidance you are giving about how to combine safety, functional safety or system safety and security, cybersecurity?
And also in Chinese, safety and security is also one word. So as my understanding, the safety, the point is how the vehicle controls itself to keep it safe from the accident. And when the accident happens, how to protect the driver and passengers. About security, I also think that it's about the external attacks, how to protect the vehicle from these attacks, like the cyber attack or the personal data. And so the safety is about to control the vehicle itself, the internal controlling, and the security is about to protect it from outsider.
Okay. Yes, and from my point of view, also bringing the experience of working on the ISO 262, we added in the second edition of the standard a clear requirement in the ISO 262 to connect safety and security. We didn't went in detail for security because, of course, this is covered by other standards. But what we asked is that when, for example, when you do the hazard and risk analysis, you need to consider if there are hazards that may be created by a threat. So the HARA and TARA, they should be combined. So, and exactly for that reason, within one of the standards in the IEEE that I'm driving, the P2851, we are creating a cybersecurity safe and SOTIF verification and validation kind of landscape. So in that landscape, we are really creating a life cycle to combine safety and security such that the activities are not just related in a high level, but we have inputs and outputs and even languages. One of the aim of the IEEE 2851 standard is to create a description language and a methodology for uniforming verification and validation. And since the starting point, we considered safety and security, and SOTIF, the safety of the intended functionality, as the same aspect of the dependability and of an automotive autonomous vehicle. Okay, I think we have still some minutes for questions. We have two questions going back to Joachim on your topic. It seems quite hot. So this is from Dr. is from James Savage. Based on what you know about the quantum security and the current technological readiness of this, what is the most important action that needs to be taken now in relation to the existing or emerging cybersecurity standards? So is there something that we as the people working in standard, we need to do now?
Yeah, I mean, it's really coming what we mentioned before. So two things. The one is the encryption. We really need to look at these new PQ algorithms and cryptography methods. The other topic that I mentioned was to look into quantum random number generator chips that need to be, because these QRNG chips, they can play a role both in the data center, but also in the car. So that needs to be looked at. And the other aspect is that if quantum computing attacks are coming from the data center first to the car, so again, it's not that the car has the quantum computer technology first, it's coming from outside and you need to protect the system from being compromised. And as I said, as we are now a lot of car companies are looking now in AV fleet operation, And some of those EVs, the electric vehicles that are autonomous, will be most likely in operation for many years. So could be 10-year life cycle or more. That we are looking really, how do we protect this? And that is a topic to look at it now, not to wait until there's a large number of quantum computers available on the market. That needs to be looked at before. So I hope that gives some answer to the question.
Okay, I think it does. And somehow related to that by another question on this by Stefano Costa, is the threat on quantum computing for security maybe pushing for more vehicle to cloud and then vehicle to infrastructure? Given that, of course, the future, let's say, initiative and standard will enable for that.
Yeah. So the thing is that the V2, because I mentioned in my talk about how do you make the whole V2X ecosystem quantum safe. That means you look at the cloud, you look at the vehicle, you look at the network interaction. And so you need to look at all these aspects and make them quantum safe. So that needs to be the strategy. So worst case scenario, let's say we have a massive quantum attack, then you need to go in another direction. Then the intelligence of the vehicle needs to be sufficient to be self-sustainable. So that means that it doesn't need any cloud interaction to drive. That would be a fallback. But that would be really just a rare exception. If you say you have a quantum attack, you cannot do anything else than disconnect from the network and just drive without the network. But that would be an exception. But in general, my recommendation is to don't just make the vehicle quantum safe. Look at all the components in the ecosystem and their interaction and make them quantum safe.
Okay, many thanks. Okay, let's we have other questions. Let me touch this one. Is by Alastair. It's more a comment than a question, but I can turn in a question. Safety is not the only impact related to what we have seen on cybersecurity. What do you see as an additional, I would say, aspect of the vehicle engineering that for you are important in relation with that? Let me start with Yanan and Yushin. Are you still online? I don't see them anymore in the camera. Okay, maybe let's start with Joachim. So what is on top of safety? Which other aspects?
On top of, can you repeat that, please? What is on top of what?
So
what is on top?
We discussed about safety and security, how they interact one with the other, and how we merge the life cycle. Is there anything else that we need to consider when we do our work on cybersecurity? Which other fields?
Yeah, I mean, in general, what I just mentioned before, I think the important point is if we look at the system architecture, and so I wanted to give you an example. So one of the topics that I'm encountering in the way in the work of coordinated driving on highways is that how do we, so for example, you have the road operator that wants to exchange data with a car manufacturer. And there is a question if this data is exchanged. So let's say the road operator has some camera information about vehicle position or something that he can share with the OEM from a safety perspective. But let's assume that data is compromised and the road operator hands this over to the OEM and it leads to an accident because the information has been compromised. The question is, who is actually responsible for the correctness of the data? Is it the road operator that sends the data to the OEM, or is it the OEM that is receiving the data? And you can already see, so if the infrastructure system is attacked and data is being manipulated and then handed over to the OEM may have not done anything wrong, it just correctly received that information, but the information leads to an accident because it's manipulated. So I think we need to kind of do a little bit more. This is an example how infrastructure and vehicle interact and who is responsible for the correctness of the information. We need to review our standards, whether we actually cover all this. And whether, so more, how do we make safety, security, interaction, how do we consider that in standards development that look at the complete ecosystem and not just only at infrastructure or only at the vehicle?
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. And maybe I can add one point. Maybe it's not so related to the question, but one of the challenge I see is that we are going in this software-defined world of vehicles, in these continuous updates. And of course, we also want to accelerate the design of those new features. So for example, the use of open source software, those platforms that are typically used in other fields where safety and security are not a concern, are also starting to create a challenge, in the sense that we really need to cope with that, either by forcing more, let's say, a consolidated, safe and secure software infrastructure, operating system, and devices, or enabling a tight safety and security management lifecycle to guarantee that those open source things doesn't create additional trouble. That is one of my view. Okay, we have just a couple of minutes then to hand over to Axel. The last question, and many thanks. There are other questions coming. We will maybe answer after the webinar and be sure that everyone got an answer. But is okay. Those are those global initiatives that we have seen, US, China, Europe, are they merging somehow, or there will be issues that something that works in the EU will not work in Europe and will not work in China? There are big kind of a contradiction. What's your view, Joachim? Sorry if I put you on the spot, and then I will.
Yeah, I will. I have to answer a lot of questions today. My view is that if you look at the US and to China, for example, is that if you look at this, so the system components can be different. You have different hardware suppliers. You have different software implementations. You may follow the same standards, but you are not coming from the same technology base. And so what I think is important to test whether, so we should have joint standards, but for example, if a Chinese car would be exported to Europe, for example, and it should have the same cybersecurity quality level than when it's operated in China. Although the suppliers and the content can be very different from, for example, from a European car, from a Chinese car. So that may be a very big challenge to make sure that although the content is different, how can we make sure that the customer, the end user, can expect the same cybersecurity quality level, and how do we get there? So I think that will be a major topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. So I think at the technology level or at some of the basic standard level, the work done by ISO 21434 and other standard is useful. Also the work we are doing within the IEEE at a different level. And again, many thanks to Tom for the contribution on the IEEE 1616 is to provide to the countries the tools to do that. How much this will happen, of course, does not depend only on technology, but yeah, I agree with Joachim with your view. Okay, so it's time to hand over to Axel. There is a good question in the background about if this will be extended to automated guided vehicles, autonomous mobile robots, and so forth. Maybe just a very short answer. I think that today is not, but it will be at the same way standard like ISO 262 and other, they are influencing those kind of world of industrial mobile robot. So there will be a kind of a cascading effect also because those systems will be much used in new industrial systems. And if you read even the ENISA paper, there is already mentioning to those automated interconnected industrial system. So having said that, I thanks again the speakers for the panel, and I hand over to Axel for the closure.
Ricardo, thank you very much. Joachim and Yanan, the network to China did break down. Unfortunately, that's why she disappeared. Nevertheless, I'm impressed by the liveliness of the discussions, which shall be continued in our workshop. Because this is the idea. We are just running this webinar as an introduction, and we are going to have a workshop about the same issue. All under this umbrella, as I mentioned in the beginning, of nurturing the era of end-to-end mobility as a service, under one umbrella from IEEE. We are going to provide a workshop, which is an extended version. This was almost a kind of workshop today already, much more lively than I expected. 12th of February will be from 13 hours to 17 hours Central European Time. We will continue to discuss these issues. Jürgen Neithes from Fujitsu will introduce us about what means trustworthiness really from the top point of view. And this is going to be the guideline idea, of course, as well for the next workshops. The idea of this is to provide 1, 2, 3, we don't know yet how many, workshops during the next years. So if anything comes up, please come up with whatever idea you have. Ricardo is going to have the pleasure to bring all the questions and all the input under one umbrella. Let's go back, please, to the agenda. Chloe, just one page back to the agenda, please. Chloe, yes. Because this is important from my point of view. Ricardo, it's not going to be so easy to bring everything together, but I think there are very interesting questions. How does it fit together, and how to include as well the IEEE initiatives on 1616? That seems to be a relevant issue, which was brought up by some people from the public. And of course, this key question, how long are we going to be capable to update a vehicle in terms of safety critical functionalities? This is a technology issue, of course. We may get an answer from BMW point of view here on cybersecurity. Tobias Gärtner is going to enlighten us here. He's working at BMW New Jersey in the United States. Philipp Schneidenbach from Ventum will increase our view of above and beyond standardization, so a wider aspect. and Michael Engsler, who's a CTO of the Israeli company Cybellum. Of course, everybody thinks in cyber digital twin technology. How far are we there to simulate all these security issues beforehand? The next thing going to be presented by Eddie, IMTS. I think Joachim already referred to this initiative, which is a global initiative to bring the implementation of standards and testing specifically worldwide together. And Eddie is leading a group of people and companies trying to implement specific test standards on cybersecurity, which is going to be a work group in this respect. And last but not least, the practical approach from AVL, Stefan Marksteiner, who is really deeply involved in the realities of engineering cybersecurity testing, is going to go deeper in it. So please register to this follow-up workshop, 12th of February, 13 hours European time. The next, please. Okay, so just to widen the aspect here now again, the idea of this industry connection group is not just only to discuss cybersecurity. The key issue is to offer a global forum to bring up whatever might be interesting in terms of standardization, where IEEE may help, what is critical, where are hot potatoes, what doesn't work in terms of to bring the world together. This is really something from my heart. I'm working still 40 years in this very global industry, and my heart is always, let's work together instead of using standards as a method to divide the markets. So we would like to provide a chance here to bring up any discussion to bring the world together. So this was really interesting and much more lively than I thought. I'm sure this workshop will even be more lively. We are going to use Zoom there as a platform, so also the other attendees will be visible as well. So I'm quite sure it's going to be quite exciting. So please register as soon as possible. That's it from my point of view. Thank you very much to the world. I really loved it. Good first step. In case you have any idea, anything you would like to recommend, any criticism, anything you would like, please contact myself. There are two ways, either via the IEEE address here or my personal email address, axeldr@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and a special thanks to the presenters. Thank you very much to all the people behind, to Laurie and Christina and Rosie, of course. Ricardo is still there. Joachim is still there as well. Janan is gone. Thanks for your participation. It was a great pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.